laws look like in other countries? And what if it was not what I thought it was? What countries have discrimination laws or anti-discrimination laws against people with disabilities? Are they the same in the United States? They take, samples of the United States or of our ADA, or does it look different? I know that in recent years, Japan really was not known to have, protection for the people with disabilities. But come to find out, the United Nations has a long list of countries that have laws on the books about protecting people with disabilities. Now, it might not look like our ADA in the United States. Some of these laws that they have links, so you can click on them and see what the focus is. Because I think that the law in itself, if you create in a country, there has to be a purpose. How did they get there? Why did they think they needed to put laws on the books to protect people with disabilities? And I don't know the answer. Thank goodness there's a lot of countries in that list that have laws on the books to protect people with disabilities. Some of these laws have to do with medical treatment. Some of these laws have to do just with the workplace in terms of treatment and payments and things like that, which is also very good, very important, a very important place to start with the law, because as we know, people with disabilities a lot of times in the workplace were looked down at, weren't paid, or sometimes just very little, just pennies, so they had to work over here and the other workers had to work over here. So we know what that discrimination looked like years ago. And, other countries, the Japanese and I think other countries have realized that people with disabilities, they travel. There's a whole industry out there to support us when we travel, and it's awesome. So, I think that it's important for all these countries to continue to develop their disability laws that they have on the books to increase, that protection, that assistance, that help, and the structure of society, sidewalks, buildings, homes, hospitals, clinics. So, it goes beyond just the job. Some of them just focus on the job. I'm grateful that they have laws on the books. It's a start. But some of these laws are very new, 2016, 2009. So, it's very, very new. Some are like happened right after the ADA here in the United States in 1990. I can see some of the dates are 1991, 92. So it looks like the ADA here in the United States sparked some curiosity, sparked some movement in other countries to take a look at this and say, hey, this might be a good idea. These are our citizens, our people, and we should support them. So in some way and protect them. So some of these countries have started with laws just recently, and they're taking in information from people with disabilities, which is awesome. So that's one of them is Japan, and so that's great. So if you're ever going to a country, you want to see kind of what their disability protection looks like or their laws, you can go to this list, and I'll put the link, of course, in the description box, so you can open it up and say, oh, I'm going to China, or I'm going to Germany, or I'm going, so you can open that up and see what it looks like. But in general, if you go to a country where they're just developing those laws, you might want to think about how you're going to handle, people looking down at you or pushing you aside or doing something weird that, in the United States wouldn't happen ever, or wouldn't happen ever in Germany or more advanced countries, France, so, even though there's laws on the books, it doesn't mean that that society has really practiced them, is really aware of them. So writing something on the books and for that society or that community to be aware is another thing. So you have to be aware how you're going to handle it, how you're going to interact with people who might not just have that education or have that formation in those laws that are on the books in their country. So it'd be helpful for us to take a peek. What do they have on the books, and how long has it been on the books? Because I think that matters. I think that matters because you have to spread that information. You have to educate your community. You have to educate your citizens about how the government is changing their ways. And it might be, and sometimes there's laws on the books, but it's not practiced. I tell lawyers, a law doesn't really become a law until people practice it, until people implement it. So, you can have a bazillion laws and important laws on the books, but if nobody implements it, is it really a law? They get mad at me. But it's so true. If a tree fell in the forest and no one was there to hear it, did it really fall? So you can have a bazillion laws on the books, but you really have to implement it for it to really to be a law, and for the people, society to become aware of that particular law that protects them. So I want to thank the United Nations and their hard work at looking at all these countries and what kind of laws do they have on the books, and can they use improvement? Can the United Nations nudge them to improve their laws or to educate their citizens about these laws? So, so that's one point. The laws that are on the books, but how aware are their citizens in that particular country? So, if you go to XYZ country and there's laws on the books, but it only has to do with the workforce, or there's laws on the books, but it only has to do with schooling, or there's laws on the books, but it only has to do with infrastructure. So, and the citizens themselves are not really aware, or it doesn't impact them, so they don't care. They just see people with disabilities like they're in the way, those poor people. I don't want them in my way. I don't want them to bother me. I need to get to the store. So there's this person with disability in a wheelchair. They're in my way. So, granted, people have good hearts, and they'll help you if you're crossing the street. They'll help you get across the street a little bit faster. So, there's all these dynamics that we can see. People with good heart who care and who really are interested in helping that other person. So you have that innate care for the other. Then you have laws that are on the books that might be very new, and the citizens are not aware, not educated about them, so they're still back there. And they don't, some might not even care that there's a law on the book. They've been educated in a certain way that people with disabilities are weak, people with disabilities are in the way, people with disabilities should be kept at home, so there's all the mentalities that you have to deal with, and there's a lack of education for the citizens themselves. So you have that aspect. So it's important for us to educate ourselves. I think, I try to think, what would I do if I went to, I don't know, Greece? I don't know what the laws are to protect people with disabilities. But, if I go to Greece, which I would see as a person or a country that is really advanced in many ways. And I would think that, but the elderly might not be, children might not be aware, so I have to be people in stores. Maybe there's a law against people with disabilities coming in the store because they block the aisles or because they do this or do that. I don't know. so it's really important, I think, for me, if I were going to Greece and I didn't know what laws were on the books, that I would look. I would take a look, and see how these laws would benefit me in a certain way, for a tourist or for a person with disabilities. So but I think a lot of countries are discovering that people with disabilities are traveling as tourists, and they want that assistance to see their country, to enjoy their country, to meet new people, new languages, new cultures. We are consumers, and I remind everybody of that. You are a consumer, and therefore the bridge, the journey should be open for you in other countries. In Africa, they established, and I can't remember the country, I don't know if it was Congo or Tanzania. I'd have to look it up. But there's a country that developed a safari specifically for people with disabilities. I was like, yes. Because the more countries are aware that we are tourists as well, they'll say, there's money there. And there is. Some of us have some money in our pockets, and we would like to take a short trip or a long trip to go see another country, to meet other people, to meet up with my long-lost brother, my long-lost dad, It can happen. So I think more countries are aware that people with disabilities are out there, and we don't, a lot of us, when we travel, that is our challenge, to make the trip, to, despite our pain or our uncomfortability or our struggles, we want to go from point A to point B. And that's our challenge. So, I think that, on airplanes, which we're working on, but on cruises, they're trying to improve their services towards the people with disabilities. All kinds of, climbing, touring, activities. They're catering to people with disabilities. So it's just really opening up in so many areas. In Wisconsin, we have a special program for people with disabilities up in a small island we have over there, and it's awesome. And I hope that some year I can save up enough to go, because it sounds really cool. So, and I love nature. I love nature very, very much, and I'd like to spend some time out in nature again. So, awareness, I think education for ourselves as well, and not so much, to educate ourselves about that country and what is their position, or the citizens of that country, what is their position about people with disabilities, so that we are aware and we're not offended, and that we make the effort to, reach out, and to build that, I guess, that mentality that we are educators. We are educators to the world. And that's how I try to see it when someone says, no, you can't do that. You're disabled, you can't do that. Or, you should just stay at home. You're disabled. You're in my way. Who the heck gave you permission? I'm just trying to do my groceries here and you're in my way. Go home. Go back to where you came from. You're an embarrassment. So it's all those insults that might come our way in a different country, and we just have to be really aware of how we're going to react. And I think it's really important to react in a calm way, in an educated way. It might not work, but the person might be open to listening to us. So, and I know Corey and other YouTubers who do travel a lot and show us that country is open and have programs for the people with disabilities is important as well. So I'll find those links so you can take a look at that. You know, I'm saying this could happen, so you have to be aware. And these are people who have been successful in traveling to XYZ country. So it's important to be aware of that. But also we have to be in the middle to be aware that some things could happen that we need to be very calm about. And just remember that role as educators to the world about, you know, people with disabilities. And how will you respond? And practice before you go. Practice before you go. So yeah, that is a big chunk of a thought. And how, you know, what are your ways? You know, Corey, I ask you, who you know, you're all over the place and traveling all over the place, and you know how tiring it is. But you've run into some very good and positive situations, and you've done some incredible things. So what kind of things have you run into, and how have you handled them, I guess? You know, we only see the positive side because I guess you have an organization that plans your trip, and that might be a good idea for all of us to have a travel agency to organize our trip so that, you know, they have our backs, you know, and make sure that the hotel is accessible, that where we want to go, that we have the proper transportation to get from point A to point B, that we go to restaurants that are accessible to us. So it's a big industry, and I think that, you know, for countries out there, it's important for them to know that we're here and we want to visit you. We want to get to know you. We want to understand and learn about your culture. We just don't want to be stuck at home. We don't want to be stuck at home. And some of us absolutely can't travel. You know, I would be one that would hesitate a little bit if I were invited. And, you know, how I would handle, you know, the different steps that I would have to make to be able to make it. And there are some disabled travelers out there that I really admire because they really put it together, and they know they have to rest the following day to recover from all that they've done. Who else is a traveler out there? Jem from Wheels and No Heels. So she's traveled quite a bit. So, you know, and she discusses her challenges of, you know, getting from point A to point B and the discrimination she has faced. So, you know, even in the U.S., you know, it happens. We know that the ADA is not perfect, and I always tell people it's not a law until the citizens of that country practice that law, implement that law of the ADA. So a lot to think about, folks. If you're going to travel, think about those moments that you could run into and how you will respond with respect in an educated way, in a supportive way, so that, you know, the citizens of that country realize that people with disabilities also have rights, that we want to be out there and we want to enjoy life. We want to learn about other people, meet them in person, try other foods. You know, we want to be daring and risky and do those kind of things if physically we can do them. So have a plan in your mind. Have a plan in case something comes up. It might be in a short duration. So that's good. So think about it, scribble about it, and I will certainly put in the description box a couple of links, Corey's website and Jem's website, also the United Nations, so you can see what kind of laws are really on the books and how new those laws are. So the newer, you know, how many citizens know about these laws in that country about discrimination and protection for people with disabilities. So that's all I wanted to say. A lot to think about. And so I will, I think there's another video that I will put down here about traveling and discrimination. I think I had something else somewhere on there, so I will look it up. But this one is really a thought-provoking type video in which, you know, for you, if you're going to be traveling to a country like Greece or Spain or France or, you know, one of those, Portugal, one of those beautiful countries in Europe or in the East, you know, to think about it and to be prepared. If there's any kind of discrimination, for you to be very patient, very supportive, and very, you know, in an educated way. It might go well. Fingers crossed it might go well. And, well, we'll see. And, you know, your position and how you respond to it will be so important, because then that person will change somewhat. Hopefully, you'll change one person, or you could change a whole organization in that country, and that would be awesome. Maybe you're going to an important meeting about disabilities in that country, and you can share all about what you know about the ADA, and that might help, you know, support and shape their laws that they're starting to put on the books.